Let's sketch the transformations in g of x equals the negative of the square root of x, h of x equals 1/2 times the square root of x, I of x equals the square root of x plus 2, and j of x equals the square root of x minus 1 plus 3 of the standard square root function f of x equals the square root of x. Recall that the graph of the standard square root function looks like this. What does it mean when we have a negative sign in front of the square root? It means that we first take the square root and then we put a negative sign in front of the output. So, for example, the square root of 4 is 2. And when we put a negative sign in front, we get a negative 2. So every output of the standard square root function is going to be negative. In other words, the negative sign in front of the square root reflects the graph of the standard square root about the x-axis. What about 1/2 in front of the square root? No matter what square root we get, when we plug in a certain value for x, the square root is going to be divided by 2. So when we get, for example, the square root of 4, which is 2, the 2 is going to be divided by 2, which is then 1. So all outputs of the standard square root function are going to be divided by 2, which gives us this graph. How can we graph the square root of x plus 2? We see that before we are going to take the square root of x, we add first a 2 to x. So when we plug in a negative 2 for x, we get negative 2 plus 2, which is 0, and the square root of 0 is 0. So negative 2, 0 is the first point on the graph of this function. And when we plug in a negative 1 for x, we get negative 1 plus 2, which is 1, and the square root of 1 is 1. So negative 1, 1 is also a point on the graph. To make it short, the positive 2 shifts the standard square root graph 2 units to the left. In the last example, the negative 1 shifts the graph 1 unit to the right. But what about the positive 3? As we know from our previous videos, adding a 3 to the function shifts the graph of the function 3 units up. So this graph is going to look like this. Let's do some spot checks anyway. When we plug in a 1, we get 1 minus 1, which is 0, and the square root of 0 is 0. 0 plus 3 is 3. So this point is correct. When we plug in a 2, we get 2 minus 1, which is 1, and the square root of 1 is 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. So this point is also correct. This video is what I did for you. If you want to do something for me, hit the bell button, like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching and happy learning everyone.